Relax. Stop chasing. And what's yours will come to you. These words might sound simple, even dismissive, in a world that glorifies hustle, ambition, and the constant pursuit of more. Yet their truth echoes with a quiet power that can't be denied. Most people spend their lives running after success, love, recognition, money, enlightenment, as if these things were fleeing from them. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what are you really chasing, and who told you it was running away from you? You see, life is not a race. There is no finish line to cross, no trophy to win for being the most anxious, the most persistent, or the most worn out. Life is happening now, right now. Not after you've achieved, not once you've found the perfect partner, not when you finally earn enough money. And the great cosmic joke is that the more desperately you pursue something, the more it eludes you. Like trying to grasp water in your hands, the tighter you hold on, the faster it slips away. Have you ever noticed how the most profound moments in life arrive when you're not trying to make anything happen? Love blooms when you're not hunting it. Ideas arise when you're not forcing them. Healing begins when you stop trying to fix yourself. It's as if the very act of letting go opens a door that chasing keeps shut. But the mind, it doesn't like this. It's been trained to equate control with safety, speed with progress, and desire with destiny. So it clings, claws, and contracts. It tells you that you must try harder, push more, stay ahead. And in doing so, you become deaf to the whisper of life. Because life doesn't shout, it speaks softly. And if you're too busy shouting your demands at the universe, you'll miss its reply. The dance of life is not about conquering, but about aligning, not about grabbing, but about receiving. A tree doesn't chase the sunlight, it simply grows toward it. The ocean doesn't run after the moon, it simply follows its pull. Why, then, do we believe that we must manipulate the universe to give us what we think we need? What's truly yours, in the deepest and most sacred sense, cannot be taken, missed, or passed by. It is already written into the unfolding of your existence. But to witness it, to live it, you must be willing to be still. Stillness is not stagnation. It is the birthplace of movement that is effortless, graceful, and true. Stillness is where the soul speaks, where intuition breathes, where your natural rhythm is remembered. This is not an invitation to become lazy or indifferent. Rather, it's a call to trust. Ironically, it is in surrender that true power is found. Not the power of domination, but the power of harmony. When you no longer seek to bend the world to your will, you begin to notice how it bends toward you. Like a breeze that carries a leaf, life carries those who trust it. And in that trust, something extraordinary happens. You start to feel free. Free from the exhausting treadmill of comparison, expectation, and fear. Free from the idea that your worth is measured by what you accomplish. Free from the belief that happiness is somewhere else, in some other time, belonging to some other version of you. In this freedom, you meet yourself. Not the self you were told to be, not the self that's constantly striving, but the self that simply is. So, relax. Not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up. Stop chasing. Not because you don't care, but because you finally see that what's real doesn't need to be hunted. It needs to be welcomed. Let life come to you, not through effort, but through presence, not through striving, but through being. What's yours will come to you, not by force, but by flow. Chasing pushes life away. Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? After all, we've been conditioned from the moment we could understand language that pursuit is noble, that drive is admirable, that only those who chase their dreams catch them. But if you look more closely, if you truly feel into the essence of what happens when you chase, you'll notice something far more subtle and far more unsaid. Chasing, at its core, is a declaration of lack. It says, I do not have, I am not complete. I must reach, stretch, grasp, and run to be whole. And in making that declaration, you build a reality around it. You begin to embody the very absence you are trying to correct. You start to believe that everything meaningful lies out there, ahead of you, somewhere in the distance. And so you rush forward, tirelessly, always with the unspoken assumption that now is never enough. That this moment, this breath, this version of you is lacking. That something must be added, something must be attained, someone must appear, and only then will life begin to make sense. But life doesn't wait in the future. It doesn't store joy like a trophy behind glass until you're worthy. Life is now. It's this moment, raw and alive. Whether you're still or in motion, whether you're winning or wondering, when you chase something, be it success, love, happiness, or inner peace, you create a silent but powerful distance between you and it. You build a wall with your yearning, a wall made of effort, of urgency, of desperation. And the harder you run, the more firmly that wall sets itself in place. It's like chasing your own shadow. The faster you go, the faster it runs. Pause. Stand still, and it returns to you. Not because you've won, but because you've stopped pushing it away. There's something fundamentally unnatural about constant pursuit. Nature doesn't chase. The sun doesn't run after the moon to illuminate it. A flower doesn't force its bloom. Rain doesn't scream to fall. It simply surrenders to gravity. There's a deep intelligence in that surrender, a wisdom in knowing when to act and when to allow. We believe that if we're not doing something, we're losing everything. That if we rest, we'll fall behind. That if we stop chasing, we'll be left with nothing. And so we stay in motion, not because we're moving towards something real, but because we're terrified of stopping. But what if stopping isn't loss? What if it's alignment? What if the universe is already trying to bring you what you desire, but it cannot reach you while you're too busy chasing a version of it that doesn't even exist yet? What if what's yours is quietly making its way toward you, but your noise, your movement, your mental clutter is drowning out its knock on your door? When you chase, you stop listening. You stop noticing the subtle invitations life is offering you. You're too focused on your own plan, your own timeline, your own imagined path. And often, those plans are rooted in fear. Fear of missing out, fear of being behind, fear of being unworthy. But fear is not a compass. It's a blindfold. It doesn't show you the way. It only convinces you that you're not there yet. The tragedy of chasing is not just in the exhaustion it causes, but in the blindness it creates. You miss what's already here. You overlook the grace that's been trying to reach you in quiet ways. You brush past the moments that were meant to be savored because your eyes are always fixed on some future horizon. And even when you do arrive at something you thought you wanted, you're already off again, chasing the next thing, barely tasting the fruit of your effort before discarding it for another. So many people live as if life is a scavenger hunt and the prize is hidden in some final destination. But the real prize is presence. It's the ability to sit in silence and feel full, to be with yourself without the gnawing feeling that you should be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. To feel your own breath and know that nothing more is required of you in that moment. To look around, even in simplicity or solitude, and see not a void, but a miracle. What you're chasing may not even be what you truly want. Often it's a projection, a story told by others, an idea sold to you by culture, a version of success or love that isn't even yours. And yet you run after it like your soul depends on it. But the soul doesn't chase. The soul draws in. The soul aligns. The soul rests in what is, and lets what is meant come forward in its own time. There is a quiet rebellion in saying, I will no longer chase, not out of laziness or defeat, but out of reverence for what is already unfolding. It is a surrender, not to helplessness, but to wisdom. A wisdom that knows what is truly yours cannot pass you by, that life isn't waiting for you to catch up. It's waiting for you to slow down, to notice, to trust. The fear behind chasing is that if we don't pursue, we won't receive. But receiving isn't passive. It's profoundly intentional. It means making space, internally and externally. It means becoming the kind of person who can hold what they ask for. It means trusting that the universe is not random, that it does not mock your desires, that it listens more closely than you realize. But it cannot deliver while you're shouting. It delivers in stillness. It arrives when you become available, not through desperation, but through openness. Not by force, but by presence. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you signal to life, I am ready to receive, not because I've earned it, not because I've fought for it, but because I remember now that it was never running from me. It was waiting for me to stop running from myself. Stillness reveals truth. This isn't just a poetic sentiment. It's a deep and quiet reality that few truly discover because few ever dare to stop long enough to notice it. Most people are in constant motion, not because life demands it, but because they've come to equate stillness with failure, with boredom, or worse, with insignificance. Yet if you look closely, the very depth of life is hidden, not in motion, but in the space between it, in the pause, in the silence, in the breath. You don't rush. In the moment, you don't try to escape. Stillness is not the absence of life, it is the presence of awareness. When the mind becomes still, not empty, but calm, something profound begins to happen. You begin to see, not with the eyes that judge, compare, and anticipate, but with the eyes of your essence. You begin to see not what you're supposed to want, not what you've been told to pursue, but what is, as it is. And in that simplicity, a strange and liberating truth begins to emerge. You don't need to chase anything, because nothing real is running away from you. In stillness, you come face to face with what you've been avoiding through all your distractions, ambitions, and busyness. Yourself. And that encounter can be unsettling because it strips away illusions. It doesn't care for your roles, your status, your plans. It cares only for what's real. And that's why most people fear it. Because it asks you to sit with your own noise until it dissolves. It asks you to face your longings without reaching. It asks you to be content without conditions. And yet, in doing so, it shows you the truth. That peace is not a prize at the end of striving. It is the space underneath it, patiently waiting for you to stop long enough to hear it. We live in a world addicted to sound, speed, and stimulation. Every second is filled with something, scrolling, speaking, proving, running. And while these things offer momentary distraction, they rarely offer clarity. Because clarity does not shout, it waits. It waits until the surface settles, like a pond disturbed by a stone. Only then can you see your reflection clearly. Only then can you see the truth clearly. Not the truth of the world's demands, but the truth of your soul's desire. There's something deeply intelligent about the silence within you. It's not a void, not a vacuum. It's alive, aware, and knowing. But to access it, you must stop talking at life. You must stop trying to fill the space and instead allow it to speak. In the stillness, you will realize that much of what you thought you needed, you don't. Much of what you feared losing, you never had to begin with. Much of what you were desperate to control was never yours to manage. And this realization doesn't come like a thunderclap. It comes gently, quietly, like a breeze through an open window. And if you're still, you'll feel it. If you're present, you'll understand. It's not that action is wrong. Movement is beautiful when it flows from awareness. But unconscious motion, motion born from fear, from lack, from the compulsion to achieve, clouds perception. It turns life into a task, into a chase, into something you must dominate rather than something you can dance with. Stillness teaches you to dance. It reminds you that being is not lesser than doing, that presence is not a weakness. It is a kind of power that doesn't demand, doesn't prove, doesn't strive. It simply is. And from that being, all true doing flows. There's a reason why the greatest insights come when you're quiet. Have you ever noticed that your best ideas don't come when you're panicked or hurried, but they come in the shower, during a walk, when you're lying awake without effort, when you've stopped trying to find them? That's design. The mind when noisy is a wall. The mind when still is a mirror. And when you stop chasing answers, the answers come, not always in the way you expect, often not in words at all, but in a knowing, in a calm conviction, in a sense of alignment that tells you, without explanation, that something is right. People often ask, how do I know what's right for me? How do I know when something is meant to be? And the answer is always the same. Be still. Not because stillness gives you new information, but because it reveals the information that was buried under all your overthinking. It allows your natural intelligence, the one deeper than logic, more profound than reason, to rise up and speak. And when it speaks, it doesn't argue or convince, it simply resonates. The irony is that so many people spend their lives chasing clarity, when clarity is what arises the moment they stop chasing. It's like trying to hear a whisper while screaming, or trying to see the stars by staring into a spotlight. The truth doesn't hide from you, you drown it out. But when you quiet the noise, when you let the chaos fall away, truth steps forward, not with fanfare, but with stillness. And in that stillness you remember what you've always known: you are not lost. You are not behind. You are not missing anything. You are simply being invited to trust what's unfolding. This doesn't mean your desires are meaningless. Desire is part of life. But chasing your desires out of fear only creates more fear. Being still doesn't mean giving up. It means you stop letting fear dictate your motion. You begin to act not because you must, but because it flows. You begin to move not from urgency, but from alignment. And that makes all the difference. Because when you act from stillness, your actions carry a different energy. An energy of peace, of purpose, of patience. An energy that doesn't demand that things happen immediately, but trusts that things will happen inevitably. Stillness isn't laziness. It is alertness without agitation. It is presence without pressure. And in that space, you begin to remember that life is not something to conquer. It is something to experience, something to trust, something to be with, not run from. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to see that what you were searching for out there has been quietly waiting for you in here all along. You are already on the path. That's the part so many miss. They look at their lives and think they're behind, off course, lost in a maze of wrong turns and wasted time. They think the real journey will begin someday after they've figured it all out, after they've made fewer mistakes, after they've become a more complete version of themselves. But that's the illusion. The truth is, you've never stepped off the path. You can't. There is no external map you're meant to follow, no trail of signs leading to a promised land if only you make the right decisions, avoid the wrong people, or perform the correct rituals. That belief only creates anxiety. It makes you doubt every step you take, questioning whether you're walking toward your destiny or away from it. It keeps you trapped in analysis, in comparison, in constant self-judgment. But the moment you realize that even your confusion is part of the way, even your hesitation is part of the dance, a deep peace begins to settle in. Because you understand now, you were never lost. You were learning. Every twist and turn, every delay, every apparent failure has not been a detour from your journey. It has been your journey. And life, in its strange and quiet wisdom, has been guiding you through all of it. Not with dramatic signs or flashing lights, but with subtle nudges, with moments of discomfort that taught you to listen more deeply, with repeated lessons that brought you to greater clarity. You weren't wandering, you were being shaped. And if you look closely, you'll see that some of the most painful chapters of your life were the very ones that shifted your course in ways you couldn't have imagined. You didn't understand it at the time. You may have cried out asking why things had to fall apart. But now, with a bit of distance, you can see it. The falling apart was the opening. The end was the invitation to something more honest, more aligned, more true. That's the beauty of the path. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It only asks you to keep moving, to keep feeling, to keep waking up. The idea that you must find your path, is rooted in the assumption that you've somehow lost it. But what if you never did? What if every step, even the ones you regret, even the ones you're still trying to make peace with, were part of something bigger unfolding through you? What if your soul knows something your mind doesn't? And what if all your striving to get there is distracting you from the truth that you are already here? When you chase some imagined ideal of a future self, you miss the wisdom of who you are now. You overlook the gifts of the present moment because your eyes are fixed on a horizon that keeps shifting. But the present moment is not empty. It's full of signs, full of possibilities, full of quiet revelations waiting for your attention. And when you slow down enough to notice, you begin to realize that life is not waiting for you to become someone else. It's waiting for you to notice who you already are. There's a sacred rhythm to your existence that cannot be rushed. You are not behind, you are not late, you have not missed your chance. There is no final train that departed while you were too distracted to notice. What's meant for you doesn't require perfect timing or flawless execution. It requires presence. It requires trust. It requires the willingness to be fully alive where you are, even if where you are feels uncertain. You don't have to push so hard to be somewhere else. You don't have to strain to become worthy. Think of nature. A seed doesn't worry about how long it will take to become a tree. It simply responds to its environment, roots itself in soil, drinks in sunlight, leans into the rain, and grows. Not because it forces itself to, but because it trusts the process written into its being. What if your journey is the same? What if your path is not something to be found, but something to be revealed? Revealed through your willingness to stop doubting every step. To stop rushing past your becoming. To stop needing every moment to prove something. You were never meant to have it all figured out. You were meant to experience the unfolding. To learn through living. To remember through forgetting. To grow through being broken open. And if you keep waiting to feel certain before you relax into your life, you'll miss the quiet magic that is already happening. Because the truth is, clarity doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender, from saying, I may not know where this is going, but I trust that I'm going somewhere meaningful. And that trust, that willingness to breathe and release, is what allows you to hear the deeper guidance that's always been there. There are no wrong turns in a universe that wastes nothing, only lessons, only evolution, only deeper invitations to remember who you are, so you can stop measuring your worth by how fast you're moving or how much you've achieved. You can let go of the pressure to catch up to anyone else's pace. This is your journey, your timing, your unfolding, and you are already on the path, not because you've arrived, but because you are alive, and life itself is the path. Trust over control. That is the invitation that life keeps whispering, though most people don't hear it because their hands are too full with the reins they refuse to let go of. There's this deep-rooted belief that control equals safety, that by managing every variable, predicting every outcome, and forcing things into place, we can protect ourselves from pain, from uncertainty, from loss. But the irony is that the more you try to control, the more life resists you. Like a river pushed back by a dam, that pressure builds, and eventually something breaks. Not the river, but you. Control is a seductive illusion. It offers the appearance of power, the comfort of planning, the promise of order. But underneath, it's born out of fear. The fear of not being enough. The fear of losing what you love. The fear that if you don't hold everything tightly, it will all fall apart. And so you try to predict what can't be predicted, to manipulate what can't be held, to force outcomes that were never yours to determine. But in that struggle, you become exhausted, anxious, bitter, and resentful, wondering why life feels so hard, why nothing flows, why peace is always just out of reach. Trust is different. Trust is not passive. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's an act of deep alignment. It's saying, I will still take steps, but I will not grasp. I will still care, but I will not control. I will still move, but I will not force. Trust is rooted in the understanding that you are not the only force at work in your life, that there is something larger than you, deeper than your plans, more intelligent than your fears. Call it the universe, call it God, call it life. It doesn't matter. What matters is knowing that it sees further than you can, and it moves at a pace wiser than your impatience. Think about the moments when things worked out better than you expected, when what you thought was a failure became a blessing, when a closed door led to a better opening, when life surprised you with timing you couldn't have planned. Those weren't moments of control. They were moments of trust. Maybe not deliberate trust, but the result of releasing what you couldn't hold on to anymore. And in that release, space was made. Space for grace. Space for something greater than your agenda to take the lead. People often mistake control for commitment, but they're not the same. You can be deeply committed to your vision, your purpose, your healing, and still trust the path as it unfolds. Control demands perfection. Trust allows for process. Control shouts, it must happen like this, in this way, by this time. Trust whispers, I'll show up, and I'll let life meet me. And in that quiet surrender, things begin to shift. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped gripping so tightly that nothing could breathe. When you live with trust, you start to move differently. You don't jump at every impulse or overreact to every delay. You don't panic when plans shift. You become more fluid, more intuitive. You make room for life to respond, for timing to align, for outcomes to evolve in ways that serve you more than your original plans ever could. And the more you trust, the more you begin to realize that control was never giving you safety. It was stealing your peace. Letting go of control doesn't mean letting go of direction. It means understanding that your energy is best used walking the path, not paving every inch of it. It means being honest with yourself about what is truly in your hands and what isn't. It means saying, I will plant the seeds, but I will not dig them up every day to see if they've sprouted. Trust is what happens when you stop trying to live as if life owes you guarantees and start living as if life is working with you. Even when you don't understand how, there's something deeply courageous about trusting, because it requires you to face the unknown and choose peace anyway. It requires you to open your hands when every instinct tells you to clench your fists. It requires you to walk forward without having all the answers. But in doing so, you start to see that what's meant for you has never needed your anxiety. It has only ever needed your openness. You were not born to live a life of tight control and constant resistance. You were born to experience the unfolding, to be surprised, to be met in unexpected ways. And every time you release your grip on outcomes, on people, on timing, you invite a different kind of magic into your life. Not the magic of perfection, but the magic of alignment. The kind that brings the right things, the right lessons, the right gifts in ways that your mind could never orchestrate on its own. When you trust instead of control, you begin to live from your center rather than from your fear. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to witness rather than judge. And in that witnessing, you discover a kind of strength that doesn't shout, but whispers. A strength that says, I don't need to know how this ends to know I am safe. I don't need to see the entire picture to take the next step. I don't need to force anything to be worthy of receiving. This is not resignation. This is reverence. Reverence for the intelligence of life, for the timing that protects as much as it provides, for the mystery that isn't here to frustrate you, but to shape you. And in that reverence, something beautiful unfolds. Not because you made it happen, but because you allowed it to. Being is more powerful than striving. It goes against everything we've been taught. From the time we were children, we've been praised for effort, rewarded for ambition, applauded for doing more, reaching higher and chasing harder. The entire culture is built around this idea that striving leads to success, that the more you hustle, the more you deserve, and the more you suffer in pursuit, the more meaningful the reward. But very few stop to ask, what is the cost of constant striving? What do we lose when we live in a state of perpetual effort, always trying to be more, get more, prove more? The truth is, when you are always striving, you're rarely present. You're always a step ahead of yourself, chasing the next achievement, the next validation, the next version of happiness. You become caught in a cycle of waiting. Waiting for something to change, for something to arrive, for something to complete you. And in that waiting, you miss the only place life ever truly exists. Right now. The present moment, in all its quiet, ordinary beauty, becomes a blur. The laughter of a loved one, the stillness of a morning, the comfort of your own breath. These things are overlooked in the name of something supposedly more important. But being is different. Being is not passive. It is not laziness or apathy or giving up. It is aliveness without force. It is presence without pressure. It is choosing to inhabit this moment fully without needing it to be different. And from that place of deep being, a different kind of action arises. Not from desperation, but from clarity. Not from fear, but from alignment. When you're being, you don't act because you're incomplete. You act because it's natural to do so. You don't strive to reach peace. You express peace through your presence. There is a profound intelligence in simply being, in sitting with your thoughts without reacting to them, in allowing your emotions to move through you without needing to fix or suppress them, in showing up to life without needing it to bow to your plans. This way of living doesn't mean you don't have goals or desires. It means you no longer make your worth dependent on achieving them. It means you're no longer trying to become something else in order to finally feel enough. You begin to understand that enough is a state of being, not a result of doing. When you live in a state of being, you start to notice things that striving blinded you to. You see the richness in simplicity. You feel the depth in silence. You begin to recognize the subtle ways life is supporting you, guiding you, showing you what's meant to stay and what's meant to go. You stop rushing into the future because you realize that everything you thought the future would give you, peace, joy, wholeness, can only be felt now. You begin to understand that fulfillment is not the fruit at the end of a long struggle. It is the soil beneath your feet, already nourishing you, if only you'd stop running long enough to notice. Striving at its root is fueled by the belief that who you are is not enough, that you must become someone different, better, more successful, more attractive, more enlightened, before you are allowed to rest. But being is the radical act of saying, I am already worthy of rest. I am already whole. I do not need to strive for my value. It is inherent. And the more you live from that place, the more you realize that the best things in life don't come when you push. Creativity, inspiration, connection, healing, these don't arise from stress. They don't bloom in a mind that's frantic, in a heart that's hurried, in a body that's tense. They bloom in spaciousness. They flourish in ease. They arrive when you stop trying to force them into existence and instead make space for them to reveal themselves. Being creates that space. It opens a doorway through which the things you've been chasing can finally enter. And not only do they come more naturally, they feel different when they arrive. Because you are no longer grasping, you are receiving. When you strive, you may get results, but they often come at a price. Burnout, disconnection, anxiety. You get what you want, but you don't enjoy it. You achieve your goal, but it doesn't fulfill you the way you hoped. Because the energy with which you arrive shapes the experience of what you receive. If you push yourself through life, life will feel like a push. But when you live from being, from presence, from trust, life begins to feel different. Not easier in the sense that nothing challenges you, but more graceful, more aligned, more deeply satisfying. By being doesn't mean you never act. It means your actions come from a different place, a place of knowing instead of needing, of responding instead of reacting. You begin to realize that some of the most powerful shifts in life happen not when you're chasing, but when you're standing still. Not when you're shouting your intentions at the universe, but when you're listening. Not when you're proving yourself to the world, but when you're simply being yourself without apology. There's an effortless power in presence, a kind of quiet magnetism. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. Life responds to it. Because there's nothing more attractive than someone who is fully here, unhurried, unshaken, unworried, not because they have no goals, but because they are no longer enslaved by them. Not because they have everything figured out, but because they have found peace in not needing to. That peace isn't the result of reaching some perfect place. It's the result of remembering who you are and knowing you don't need to become someone else to be enough. In a world obsessed with movement, being is revolutionary. In a culture addicted to productivity, presence is rare. But the deeper you go into being, the more you realize that it is not the opposite of progress, it is the source of it. True transformation, true joy, true fulfillment do not come when you strive for them relentlessly. They come when you stop reaching and start receiving, when you stop chasing and start becoming, when you stop performing and start living. You see, most people live under the illusion that life is something they must conquer, that they must struggle against the currents of uncertainty, striving endlessly to control outcomes, manipulate circumstances, and force their desires into reality. But what if you stopped? What if, instead of bracing yourself against the chaos, you leaned into the rhythm of the universe with a quiet, unwavering trust that everything, yes, everything, always works out for you? A curious thing, this idea, to act as if the game is rigged in your favor. Not arrogantly, not with entitlement, but with the serenity of someone who knows that they are part of something far more intelligent than their own plans. Imagine moving through your days with the unshakable belief that life is not a series of random misfortunes or haphazard victories, but a perfectly orchestrated dance, in which every misstep, every delay, every so-called failure is simply a clever turn in the choreography, not an error, but an invitation to see things differently. The problem is, we have become so accustomed to fear and resistance that we treat uncertainty like a threat rather than an adventure. We armor ourselves with worry, expecting disappointment just to shield ourselves from the sting of it. We say things like, "I'm just being realistic," when in fact we are only being afraid. But consider the weight that falls away when you choose instead to live as if you are deeply loved by existence itself, that no matter what occurs, the unfolding of your life is always leading you somewhere meaningful, even when the map makes no sense. To act as if everything works out for you is not to deny the storms. It is to carry an inner sun that refuses to be dimmed by them. It is to walk through uncertainty with grace, not because you know the outcome, but because you trust the process. You begin to meet setbacks with curiosity, not panic. You see endings not as failures, but as gentle nudges toward better beginnings. You smile not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer enslaved by the illusion that it needs to be. And once you begin to live this way, truly live this way, the world begins to mirror it back to you. Circumstances soften, opportunities reveal themselves, people show up when you need them, often without explanation. Coincidences begin to form a pattern, not because some external force is suddenly favoring you, but because you finally attuned yourself to the natural flow of things. You've stopped clutching at control, and in doing so, you've allowed the deeper intelligence of life to breathe through you. This is not about pretending to be happy when you're not. It's not about faking positivity or suppressing pain. It's about cultivating a radical kind of faith, not in a distant deity, but in the sacredness of your own experience. The kind of faith that whispers, "I don't know how, I don't know when, but I know that this too is working for me." The kind of faith that turns every detour into a discovery, every heartbreak into a holy invitation, every delay into divine timing. There is a peculiar magic in surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of resistance. When you stop insisting that life obey your expectations, you begin to notice that it has been working in your favor all along, only in ways you never thought to imagine. You see, the universe doesn't speak in straight lines. It speaks in spirals, in paradoxes, in synchronicities. And it only begins to make sense when you stop demanding sense from it. So try, just for a moment, to carry yourself as if you are safe, as if every closed door has a reason, as if every painful moment is a seed, as if every unanswered prayer is a redirection towards something more aligned. Begin to walk not in fear of what might go wrong, but in quiet excitement for how it might all come together in ways you couldn't plan if you tried. And watch, slowly but certainly, how life begins to rise up to meet that expectation. Let go of control. Trust the flow of life. It sounds simple, almost poetic, but the reality of it, the lived truth, is one of the most difficult things for the human mind to accept. We are taught from a young age that if we don't grip tightly, plan meticulously, and worry constantly, then everything will fall apart. We believe, deep down, that our effort alone is what keeps the world from crumbling around us. And so we live clenched, bodies tense, minds buzzing, hearts restless, always anticipating the next catastrophe, always preparing for some future we cannot see. But have you ever stopped and asked, who told you that life needs to be controlled? Who convinced you that without your anxiety, your constant micromanagement of every possibility, things would go wrong? You see, there's a deep illusion embedded in our way of thinking that we are separate from life and that life is something that must be tamed or directed. This is where all the fear begins. Because the moment you see yourself as an outsider, you believe you must manipulate what's outside to feel safe inside. But the truth is, you are not separate from life. You are life. You are the same intelligence that grows trees without instruction, beats your heart without your permission, and brings waves to shore without needing a manual. And yet, despite this profound connection to something far beyond your conscious comprehension, you still worry that if you let go, everything will collapse. But perhaps it is only when you let go that things can begin to rise. To trust the flow of life is not to become passive. It is to become deeply aligned. It is not the same as giving up. It is the act of stepping back into harmony with what is already unfolding. Life is movement. It is always in motion, always changing, always unfolding. And when you try to stop that movement, when you try to hold things still or force them in a particular direction, you create tension. You create friction between your expectations and reality. That friction is what we often call suffering. Think about the river. It doesn't ask where it is going. It doesn't try to skip the rocks or avoid the bends. It flows, because that is its nature. And the beauty of the river is not found in its straightness, but in its curves. Likewise, your life is not meant to be a rigid line from point A to point B. It is meant to meander, to surprise you, to take you through forests you didn't plan for and valleys you never dreamed of. But if you're too busy trying to paddle upstream, you'll miss the magic of where the current is trying to take you. There's a kind of grace that arrives when you finally say, I don't need to control this anymore. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped clinging. You allowed life to breathe again. You allowed yourself to breathe again. You might wonder, what if letting go means I lose something important? But I would ask you, how many things have you lost by holding on too tightly? How many moments have passed you by because you were too busy trying to control the next one? The irony is that in our obsession with controlling life, we often miss living it. We become so attached to outcomes that we forget the present is already sacred. We wait for the perfect alignment, the perfect condition, before we allow ourselves to relax. But life never promised perfection. It only promised presence. And presence is all you ever needed. Letting go is not something you do once. It's a practice. A moment-by-moment remembrance that you are not here to control the tide, only to surf it. And some days the waves will be high. Other days the water will be still. But your peace doesn't have to depend on the conditions. Your peace can come from knowing that you are never truly off course. Even the detours, even the delays, are part of the dance. You may not always understand them in the moment, but life has a way of revealing its wisdom in hindsight. Often, it's the things we fought hardest against that ended up saving us. The plans that fell apart that gave us room to breathe. The people who left that made space for our true selves to emerge. When you let go, you are not saying that you don't care. You are saying that you trust something greater than your fear. You are saying that you believe life is not out to get you, it's out to grow you. And growth doesn't always look like forward motion. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like chaos. But even in the chaos, there is a deeper order unfolding. Just like a symphony may sound dissonant in one measure, only to resolve into harmony later, your life is playing a tune that only makes sense when you stop trying to skip ahead. So breathe. Loosen your grip. Let the weight fall from your shoulders. Trust that you are not lost. You are simply being led by a path that doesn't announce itself in advance. The truth is, everything doesn't need to be figured out right now. It just needs to be felt. It just needs to be lived. And the more you trust that you are exactly where you are meant to be, the more you'll begin to see that letting go was never the end. It was always the beginning. What if failure isn't failure at all? What if what you call a setback is simply a part of a larger, unfolding, unseen thread in the greater tapestry of your life? You see, we've been taught to view life linearly. Success follows effort, reward follows plan. If something doesn't go the way we intended, we label it wrong, broken, a mistake. But the universe doesn't operate by human timelines or definitions. It doesn't move in straight lines. It curves, it spirals, it meanders. It teaches through contrast, and it speaks in silence. And more often than not, the very thing we wish hadn't happened is the doorway to a reality we never could have imagined if we were left to our own small ideas of how things should be. Perceiving every setback as part of the plan requires a different kind of seeing. It's not the seeing of the eyes, which are bound by surface appearances. It's the seeing of the soul, a kind of inner vision that watches not just what happens, but how it changes us. There is a secret order to the chaos, a quiet rhythm even in the noise. But you have to be still long enough to hear it. And the stillness doesn't come when life is calm, it comes when you stop fighting the storm. Sometimes we are so fixated on what we've lost that we fail to see what we're being given. A lost job feels like failure until months later we realize it freed us from a life that was never meant for us. A breakup feels like rejection until we notice how much we were shrinking just to be accepted. A delay feels like divine silence until the day something arrives that makes us whisper, "Ah, now I understand." Life is not interested in your comfort, it is interested in your awakening. And awakening often feels like falling apart before it feels like rising. There is nothing inherently wrong with desiring outcomes, goals, dreams, plans. They are part of how we navigate the world. But the suffering begins when we believe that those outcomes are the only path to fulfillment, when we mistake the map for the territory. Because then, when something doesn't go as planned, we panic, we interpret the detour as doom. But in truth, life is always guiding us. It's just that its language is too subtle for our mind that is constantly judging every moment. So we must practice a deeper kind of listening. When the door closes, don't curse it. Pause. Ask what you are being protected from, even if you don't know the answer yet. When the relationship ends, don't spiral into unworthiness. Ask what parts of yourself you can now reclaim. When the opportunity vanishes, don't descend into despair. Consider that maybe there's something bigger preparing itself behind the scenes. The question is not, why did this happen to me? The question is, what is this here to teach me? That one question shifts everything. Life doesn't promise ease, it promises evolution. And evolution rarely happens in clarity or convenience. It happens in tension, in loss, in the unraveling of who we thought we were, so that something deeper can emerge. Think of a seed underground. From above it looks like nothing is happening. It's buried, it's in darkness, but inside transformation is occurring. The shell is cracking, the roots are growing. Something is taking shape, slowly, invisibly. And yet, if you didn't know better, you might say it's failing, it's stuck, it's lost. But give it time, and one day it breaks the surface. That's how growth works. It's silent before it's seen. It's confusing before it's clear. So when life brings you to your knees, don't assume it's punishment. It may be preparation. When things fall apart, don't rush to fix them. Let yourself sit in the pieces for a moment. There's wisdom there, buried beneath the discomfort. Something is always being revealed in the breaking. Maybe it's the truth you've been avoiding. Maybe it's the strength you didn't know you had. Maybe it's the path you were never going to choose on your own. And yes, it might hurt. It might not make sense. We are so quick to judge time. We call something bad simply because we don't like how it feels right now. But life is not a snapshot. It's a story. And stories take time to unfold. The twist you don't understand today may be the very thing that gives meaning to the entire plot. There is a strange kind of mercy in the unknown. If you allow yourself to trust that even what seems like ruin is part of a greater restoration. This is not blind optimism. This is not denying the pain. It's choosing to believe that pain is not the full story. It's deciding that even in the darkness, some invisible thread is still weaving beauty, even if your eyes can't yet see it. To believe that every setback is part of the plan is to release the belief that your worth is measured by your control over outcomes. It is to let go of the ego's need to succeed in order to feel safe. And in that letting go, you discover something astonishing. You were never meant to force life into shape. You were meant to trust its shaping of you. So allow the plan to unfold, allow the delays, allow the redirections, let them come and let them teach you. What's meant for you will not pass you, not because you chase it, but because you become the version of yourself who is ready to receive it. And sometimes becoming that version requires falling apart in ways you didn't expect. But trust this, when you look back, you'll see how the pieces all fit together. The failures were never failures, the losses were never losses. They were just the necessary pauses between the notes of a song you didn't yet know you were singing. Life is not punishing you. It is preparing you, not for what you want, but for what you're truly here to live. And if you can begin to see that, even dimly, then every setback starts to look a little less like an ending and a little more like a doorway. A quiet, mysterious doorway leading somewhere more beautiful than you could ever imagine while still trying to be in control. Expectation is a peculiar force. It's invisible, yet it shapes everything. It lives in the background of your thoughts, often unnoticed, quietly sculpting how you interpret the world. And the truth is, the energy with which you move through life, the way you expect things to turn out, deeply influences what life gives you in return. When you act with a subtle but unwavering belief that everything always works out for you, you begin to attract the kind of reality that mirrors that confidence. Not through magic, not by bending the universe to your will, but by tuning yourself into a frequency where ease, trust, and alignment become your natural state of being. We have been conditioned to expect the worst, to assume that if something can go wrong, it probably will. And so we brace ourselves, not just emotionally, but physically. Our bodies tense, our breath shortens. We begin living from a place of defensiveness, as if life is a battlefield and we are its weary soldiers. This expectation of struggle doesn't just remain a feeling, it becomes a filter through which we experience everything. The moment something minor goes wrong, it confirms our fear. We say, "See? I knew this wouldn't work out." And so the cycle continues, not because the world is punishing us, but because we are unconsciously affirming what we already expect. But what if you reverse that equation? What if you began to expect good things, not as a hope, not as a desperate wish, but as a quiet, steady knowing? What if you walked into every situation, every decision, every unknown, not with fear, but with calm confidence? Imagine entering a room not thinking, "Will they accept me?" but knowing, "I bring peace wherever I go." Imagine pursuing a goal not with anxiety, but with the certainty that if it's for you, you begin to exude something different, an energy that is less grasping and more magnetic. And the world responds. People often ask, how can my thoughts affect reality? But the better question might be, how can they not? You're always interacting with life directly. You're always interacting with your perception of it. Two people can walk through the same day and have wildly different experiences based entirely on what they expected to see. One will notice only the traffic, the rude comment, the delay. The other will notice the kind smile from a stranger, the unexpected opportunity, the beauty in the ordinary. The difference is not in the day, the difference is in the lens. When you expect that everything always works out for you, you start to move with less urgency and more faith. You stop trying to control every detail, because you no longer need certainty to feel safe. Your safety is rooted in your internal posture, not your external conditions. And paradoxically, this calm confidence makes you more attuned to the flow of life. You begin to see possibilities you would have missed if you were busy scanning for danger. You take inspired action not because you're desperate, but because you're aligned. This doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. Life will still throw its curveballs. But your relationship to those moments changes. Instead of collapsing into fear or frustration, you take a breath and say, somehow, even this is for me. And because you believe that, your mind begins searching for evidence to support it. Suddenly the detour becomes the best part of the journey. The rejection opens a better door. The delay protects you from something you didn't even know was coming. You realize that your expectation shaped not only your emotional response, but your grace and grace. Think of your expectation as a compass. When it's set to fear, every movement feels like a risk. Every silence feels like abandonment. Every problem feels like a threat. But when your compass is set to trust, everything becomes a message. Everything becomes a guide. You're no longer searching for what's wrong. You're attuned to what's right. And that subtle shift makes all the difference. It's not about pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It's about believing that even when things look uncertain, the outcome is still working in your favor. Some might call this delusion, but look closer. The world is full of people who succeeded because they believed they could, often before they had any proof. Their belief wasn't born from evidence. It created the evidence. They acted as if their success was inevitable, and the world slowly caught up. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. It's the quiet power of walking in the direction of your vision without demanding guarantees. It's what happens when your internal world becomes stronger than the noise of your doubts. Children understand this instinctively. They imagine grand futures, bold dreams, impossible feats, and never once stop to question whether it's realistic. It's only when we grow older and begin absorbing the fears of others that we learn to lower our expectations to match the disappointments around us. But expectation is not meant to shrink, it is meant to expand. It is a creative force, a prayer you whisper not with your lips but with your life. Every step you take, every thought you nurture, every risk you accept or avoid, it all flows from what you expect. So let yourself expect goodness. Let yourself believe that things are unfolding in ways you don't yet understand. Speak to yourself not with warnings but with affirmations. Move as if you are already being carried. Act as if the road beneath your feet is being laid, one step at a time, just for you. Because in some mysterious way, it is. When you shift your expectation from fear to trust, the entire landscape of your experience changes. Not because the world changes, but because you do. And you, being a part of this world, cannot help but reshape it in your image. Something profoundly liberating about no longer depending on external circumstances to feel secure. Most people live as if the world outside must be arranged just right before they can be calm inside. They wait for the job offer to feel valuable, the relationship to feel whole, the approval of others to feel worthy. And in that waiting, they become prisoners. Not of the world, but of their own belief that peace must be earned through the satisfaction of outcome. But what if that isn't true? What if the most powerful posture you can hold is the one that says, my inner certainty does not waver with the winds of the world. To live from inner certainty is to be rooted like a tree whose foundation lies deep in the unseen. The storms may come, the weather may change, but the roots hold firm, not because the tree controls the sky, but because it knows it belongs to the earth. Similarly, when your sense of calm, of direction, of purpose comes from within, then nothing outside can truly destabilize you. Not rejection, not delay, not even because you're not drawing your power from what happens. You're drawing it from who you are beneath it all. This is not about being indifferent to the world. It's not about shutting down emotionally or pretending that nothing affects you. It's about choosing not to let your inner peace be dictated by things beyond your control. It's recognizing that your mind is a gatekeeper. Every thought you allow, every fear you feed, every assumption you cling to becomes a part of your internal world, and your internal world is the lens through which you meet reality. If that world is constantly being shaped by outer events, then you will always be unstable. Your confidence rising and falling with the tides of approval, fortune, and validation. But once you realize that the real power lies in your ability to choose your perspective, everything changes. Imagine walking into a room and sensing disapproval, judgment, tension. The old self, the one trained to depend on outer cues, might shrink or overcompensate, but the new self, the self anchored in inner truth, stays still. It doesn't waver because it's not performing. It's not there to be accepted. It's there to be present, whole, and grounded. This way of living doesn't come from reading affirmations or repeating mantras, though those can help. It comes from deep, deliberate practice. It comes from moments of silence, where you begin to recognize that you are not your thoughts, nor your emotions, nor your circumstances. You are the awareness that observes it all. And in that awareness, there is peace, a kind of stillness that doesn't need proof to feel okay, a kind of calm that isn't earned. It's remembered. When you move from this place, the world responds differently. It's as if life begins to align with your steadiness. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop reacting to every bump and turn as if it's a crisis. You become more thoughtful, more intentional, more able to discern what is truly important. Because when you're not constantly trying to fix what's outside, you can finally listen to what's inside. Think of the ocean. On the surface, waves crash, winds howl, storms rage. But dive deep enough, and there's a stillness untouched by any of it. That stillness exists within you. It always has. You don't have to create it, you just have to return to it. And returning to it means letting go of the belief that you are only as okay as your circumstances allow. It means practicing trust, not in the sense that everything will go your way, but that you will be okay even when it doesn't. It's important to understand that this inner certainty is not the same as control. In fact, it's the opposite. Control is the ego's attempt to manage the unknown. Certainty is the soul's surrender to the truth that it can handle the unknown. When you live from inner certainty, you no longer need to predict the future in order to feel at peace in the present. You walk with openness, with humility, but also with quiet strength. You stop seeking reassurance because you've already found it inside. And yes, there will still be fear, There will still be moments where the world shakes you, where doubt creeps in, where plans fall apart. But even then you remember, I am not what is happening to me. I am the one who chooses how to meet what is happening. And in that choice, you reclaim your power. Not a loud, showy power, a gentle, grounded power. The kind that doesn't need to shout because it's already at peace. Living from this space allows you to let go of so much unnecessary suffering. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing others to validate your journey. You stop comparing your path to anyone else's because your sense of self no longer depends on comparison, on applause, or on proving anything. It's enough simply to be aligned, to be honest with yourself, to be connected to something deeper than your ever-changing thoughts. And from that space, everything begins to shift, not because you force life to bend, but because you finally bent toward your own truth. This is the essence of inner freedom. It's not about detaching from life. It's about becoming so rooted within that you can dance with life without fear, so that whether the day brings sunshine or shadow, you remain whole. Whether people praise you or misunderstand you, you remain still. Whether things go to plan or fall apart, you remain present. Because you were never looking for peace outside anyway. You were carrying it all along. We tend to misunderstand surrender. To many, it sounds like giving up, like weakness, like being defeated by life. We associate it with passivity, with failure, with a kind of hopeless collapse in the face of things we cannot change. But true surrender is nothing like that. It is not weakness. It is wisdom. It's not resignation. It is the highest form of trust, and perhaps more than anything, it is the act of stepping out of the ego's exhausting belief that it must control every outcome in order to feel safe. You see, the human mind is always trying to build certainty out of uncertainty. It analyzes, calculates, worries, prepares. It creates plans, backup plans, and even plans for those plans. It tries to protect itself from disappointment by imagining every possible way things could go wrong. And while this might seem like responsibility or foresight, it's often just fear into submission. A mind constantly on guard, trying to force the future into submission, isn't wise. It's terrified. Surrender is the moment you stop fighting life. It's when you lay down your weapons, not because you've lost, but because you finally see that there was never anything to fight. It's the realization that your battle was with your own need to control, and the control itself was the very thing separating you from peace. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop resisting. You stop gripping so tightly that you suffocate. The very life you're trying to shape. There's a quiet strength in the one who surrenders. Because in that surrender, they've seen something most people miss. That life doesn't need to be micromanaged. It needs to be trusted. Just look at nature. The trees do not push their leaves into bloom. The waves do not force themselves to the shore. There is a deep rhythm to it all, a kind of cosmic timing that unfolds without human interference. And when you begin to trust that same rhythm within your own life, you step into alignment with something far more intelligent than your fears. Control is an illusion, and a fragile one at that. You never really know how things will turn out. You can plan every detail, and one unexpected moment can unravel it all. That doesn't mean you stop planning. It means you plan from peace, not from panic. You make decisions, you take action, but you do so with a light grip. You don't cling to the outcome as if your worth depends on it. You learn to let things unfold and trust that even if they don't go your way, they might still be going the right way. Surrender also brings clarity. When you're no longer obsessed with forcing a result, you can actually see more clearly what's in front of you. You notice things you were too anxious to perceive before. You become open to paths you never would have considered had you been locked into a rigid idea of how things were supposed to be. And in that openness, life begins to move more freely through you. You stop blocking the flow with your resistance. You become a vessel instead of a dam. People often ask how to surrender, as if it's something you do once and then it's done. But surrender is not a single act. It's a posture, a way of being. It's the practice of letting go, again and again. Every time your mind tightens its grip, every time you catch yourself obsessing, doubting, or catastrophizing, you gently release the tension. You return to the breath. You return to the moment. You say to yourself, I don't need to know how this ends to be at peace right now. And surrender doesn't mean that you sit back and wait for life to happen to you. It means you act when it's time to act, but you release the expectation that your action must produce a specific result. You do your part, and then you trust that life will do its part. You let go of the timeline. You let go of the outcome. You let go of the belief that you are only successful if everything unfolds according to plan. And in that letting go, you begin to experience a freedom you didn't even know you were missing. So much of our suffering comes not from what happens, but from our resistance to what happens. We fight reality. We tell ourselves it should be different, that it must be different. And in doing so, we blind ourselves to the wisdom hidden within what is. Surrender is the doorway to that wisdom. It's how you move from frustration to flow, from panic to presence, from force to faith. There's something sacred in allowing, in saying, I trust that even this has purpose, in embracing not just the pleasant, but the painful, not just the easy, but the uncertain. Because when you surrender, you are no longer at war with life. You are in conversation with it. You stop shouting your demands and you start listening. And what you hear in that silence is often far more profound than anything you could have imagined in the noise of control. The irony is that when you stop chasing peace through control, peace finds you. When you stop demanding happiness from outcomes, you begin to feel joy from within. When you stop trying to prove yourself, you remember that you were never unworthy to begin with. All of this entire transformation, begins the moment you stop grasping and start trusting. The moment you realize that surrender isn't about defeat, it's about alignment with something bigger, something truer, something more eternal than your fears. This is not easy. The ego will fight it every step of the way. It will scream, if I don't hold on, everything will fall apart. But what if that's exactly the illusion keeping you stuck? What if letting go isn't the collapse you think it is, but the rising you've been waiting for? What if the moment you release the outcome is the moment life can finally surprise you? What if surrender is not the end of the journey, but the very beginning of the one your soul came here to live? So when your plans fall apart, when the answer doesn't come, when the door won't open, pause, breathe, whisper to yourself, I surrender. And know that in that moment you are not giving up, you are giving in. to wisdom, to life, to the deep knowing that no matter what, you will be okay. Because you are not here to control the river. You are here to trust the current. And it is already carrying you to where you are meant to be.